Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. These are all the sci-fi movies I watched this month. So I started off by watching Gravity. Not a sci-fi film, but it's a space film, so I'm counting it. This is such a great atmospheric film with really good visuals, obviously with it being in space the entire time. There's a lot of opportunities for some really sick visuals. And then the whole concept of just being stuck in space is really interesting because that's a really unnerving and unsettling kind of thought of just being stuck there with absolutely nothing around you. I think Sandra Bullock does an incredible job for this film. It wasn't something I necessarily thought about while watching the film, but afterwards, thinking back on it, the fact that it's almost just her for the entire thing and she's able to keep the watcher engaged that entire time is really impressive. It helps that this movie is only like an hour 30, so it's a nice tight movie. I think it's really well paced and everything. Maybe the one thing that didn't work for me is I didn't really find myself getting real emotional at times, but it overall didn't really matter. Next up, I watched Arrival, directed by Denis Villeneuve or something. I don't know. It's some French name. He's the same director as the Dune movies, so I thought it'd be interesting to just check out one of his earlier works. And it's another sci-fi film, but this one set on Earth. It's dealing with people contacting aliens. I think it's really interesting because it has a more focus on language, and like the main character is a linguist, and it's all about trying to communicate human language with these aliens and their completely different form of communication. And I think that's a really cool thing to focus on when dealing with a subject like aliens. But the characters didn't really leave much of an impression on me. They're pretty forgettable. But that's probably my only real main complaint. Everything else was solid. I don't think it did anything incredible, but it's a quite good movie. Star Wars: A New Hope. I always find it really interesting to look back on things that were extremely influential and just how they've grown and changed over time. A New Hope is all around quite solid. I can definitely see why it has caused a lot of influence, but one key problem I have with this movie is the fact that it's made also to be a standalone movie as well as being part of a series. It's very clear in terms of the structure that they were worried about whether or not this would succeed, so they want it to still be able to be a self-contained story. And I think that really causes some problems in terms of story pacing and overall structure. I think it would be a lot better if they would have just fully committed to the idea of this being part of a series. And maybe they weren't even planning on being a series at this point. I don't know the exact history, but I think that would have made it a better film, because what we have now with A New Hope is just a sort of strange in-between film where it doesn't quite know what it's supposed to be. And then The Empire Strikes Back, unsurprisingly the best of these three Star Wars movies, but I still didn't feel like I felt in love with it nearly as much as some other people do. And I think that partly comes down to the fact that I already know this movie. I know what's gonna happen, I know all the big moments, so there isn't as much of a wow factor for me. But despite that, I still feel like this is a great movie. I think the characters especially are really good in this movie just because they were established in the first one, and so in this one we really get to see them be the characters that we know and love. The main cast of Luke, Leia, and Han have such great chemistry, and I think Harrison Ford as Han Solo especially does really great in this movie, and I think that's obvious. Harrison Ford is just a great actor anyway. But then this one also had some of the coolest action set pieces that I was really into, because I think something about these movies is that I'm not as into the action in them sometimes, but this one I really, really enjoyed. I do wish I was able to see this movie when it first came out, just so I could better understand the cultural impact, just because watching it now, it's really hard to see that. And then Return of the Jedi, and man, I just did not really enjoy this one. I found myself being quite bored throughout a lot of it. I think part of that has to do with the fact that the characters didn't really have any big moments where I was like, yes, that's the character doing their thing, you know? I think really the only time I felt that was maybe during the starting sequence with Jabba the Hutt, but even then, it wasn't a particularly great part of the movie. And honestly, that's probably the best part of the movie, because I did not really enjoy a lot of stuff after that. The one most significant character beat is the fact that Luke is having this conflict about whether or not he's going to join the dark side, but I really just didn't feel that at all. I was like, there's no way Luke's going to join. Nothing about him gives off the idea that this is something he wants to do. It just didn't make sense why it felt like the movie was trying to be like, oh, will he, won't he? It didn't. It, like, we all know he won't. And then the ending battle as a whole, which was way longer than it should have been. But it's separated into 3 separate battles, and none of them are especially good. Like, I think the only one that's really interesting is maybe the fight with, Luke, Darth Vader, and the Emperor. But, like, the space battle, that had me straight up snoozing the entire time. I could not watch more shots of just a spaceship flying towards the camera with the explosion in the background. There was nothing special about it. And as a whole, I felt like this movie didn't have a strong, direction in terms of, having a director who has a strong personality and style. This movie just didn't have a personality. It was pretty substanceless as a whole. And then I rewatched Dune in preparation for the sequel coming out. And I'm so glad I did, because I enjoyed it another step higher than what I did the first time. And I still quite enjoyed it the first time. Like, I was still planning on going to the sequel and all. But I think just with how many terms are thrown at you in this movie, it's confusing. And so you don't really exactly get what's going on in the first watch, at least for me. So the second one was really nice. I felt like I understood what was going on better, and I was better absorbing everything. But I would say even if you don't take in the story too much, you can still appreciate this movie for the incredible visuals, sound effects, music, all that. It's all fantastic. And I think those things help, seeing as this is a more dialogue heavy movie, and it can feel a bit slow at times, but those things, like the music, the visual effects, all that, it really helps to draw you into the movie and just let it take you away on this ride, and it's really cool. I think my one main complaint about this movie, though, is that I didn't feel super attached to any of the characters. None of them were super interesting to me, and I'm not a huge fan of the Chosen One narrative, but I'm okay with it just because this is a series, and so it'll help to give me time to, grow to like these characters more and understand them better. But aside from that, overall, this movie is fantastic. Forrest Gump. Yeah, definitely not a sci-fi movie, but I was on a plane ride, and I was like, I want to watch a movie, I want to watch something new, but, again, I'm on a plane. I gotta watch something that's gonna be an easier watch. I heard Forrest Gump was quite a funny, wholesome movie with some good drama, so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll watch Forrest Gump. But man, I did not realize there'd be that much drama, to the point where this is pretty much a tragedy, I would argue, and it strongly supports the idea that comedy and tragedy go hand in hand, which is something that, even though that's a common idea that I hear, I don't see it well represented too much, because this is a genuinely funny movie. But at the same time, it hits you to your core. The fact that I was watching this on a plane, not great audio, not great visuals, and I was still getting pretty emotional, I think just shows how powerful this movie is. And then I watched Dune 2. Now, I did make a video on this after, initially watching it immediately. I made a video, so I'm not really going to say too much, but all I have to say is that it's better than the first. It takes everything from the first and just improves on it. It's a fantastic movie. You should go see it. If you want to hear more of my thoughts, go check out my video on it. And there you have it. Those are all the movies I watched this month. Please tell me your thoughts on these movies. It'd be interesting to hear that. Remember to save the blobfish, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.